Hi everybody, sorry for the slight delay in starting, a little technical glitch, but we're online now and welcome. Hello, my name's Avril Dunn and I'll be the presenter for today's webinar, Business Planning Fundamentals. Some housekeeping before we begin. Your audio and video has been switched off for this webinar. The session will be recorded and sent to everybody who registered, along with the resources that we discuss and the slides of the presentation as well. If you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box, which you'll find a button for in the bottom of your Zoom screen toolbar. And for any technical issues, please use the chat box, which is next to the chat button is next to the Q&A button in the bottom toolbar. For any other issues, just direct message us and we will help you out as best we can. I'm going to turn my video off now for the presentation so you can focus on the content and share my screen. Okay. So let's break down what we are going to discuss today. We're going to touch on some common business planning mistakes. Then we're really going to unpack the business model canvas, which has 9 elements across desirability, feasibility, and viability. Importantly, this is really about getting your thoughts out of your head and into a practical plan that you can build from and grow as you grow your business. So let's get into it. If you haven't heard of the business model canvas before, let me introduce you to it. The canvas we'll be looking at was developed by a software company, Strategizer, and it's essentially a business model which describes the rationale of how an organisation creates, delivers, and captures value. It's open source, so that means that anyone can use it. And there's lots of books and articles written about it and how to use it if you're interested to look those up. We use it here at Sparrowly Group for our own business, as well as the organisations that we consult with and the businesses that we mentor. So, business plan mistakes. Too often we see that business plans are far too long and yet so vague, and they don't really tell the reader anything useful or concrete. It's just not practical. I'm sure someone in your business journey has said once, "Have you got a business plan?" And that's led to a few moments, either an "oh crap" moment, or a "yeah, I have, but I never look at it" moment, or I actually have no idea how to write one or where to get started. Detailed business plans are important if they're relevant and practical, but often it's a business owner's thinking that they think that they're doing the right thing by creating these long business plans or downloading the government template for business plans and filling in the blanks, but there's no real thought process or research that goes into them. The process that we're about to show you is an important part of the planning process and one of the fundamental steps to ensuring your business planning is watertight. So, let's talk about some common business planning mistakes that we've seen over and over, which you really need to avoid if your business is going to be a viable long-term business. These include having unrealistic financial projections, not defining the reader. For example, is this an internal only document, or is it external for investors or government support, for example? Not doing enough research is another. Hiding your weaknesses. Look, if you aren't strong in a certain area, it's important to highlight this as part of the business plan and what you'll do to counteract it and help your business to thrive beyond your own personal weaknesses. Including too much information, it's just simply waffle and has no real relevance or practical application. No focus on your competitors. Superficial definition of your target customers. And for the record, everyone is not your target customer. Underestimating business risk, or worse, thinking none exists. There is a risk in everyday life of running a business as well. And finally, not having a business plan in the first place. In plotting out your business model canvas, it allows you to get clear on your business promise. Now let's take a closer look at the canvas. There are 9 boxes or building blocks which identify the desirability of your business, the feasibility of your business, and the viability of your business. We start with the right-hand boxes of customer segments, then the value proposition, your channels and customer relationships. This is does the customer actually want this bit? Then we move on to the left-hand boxes of key resources, key activities, and key partners. This is can we, the business, can we build this? The remaining 2 boxes of revenue streams and cost structures look into the viability of your business and answer the question, should we build it? Is it actually financially viable for us to build this business? So, mapping out your own business model canvas, let's get into that. Starting with your customer segments. These are the different groups of people or organizations in which you aim to reach and serve. In most cases, you may define one or several large or small customer segments. And as a business owner, you really need to make a conscious decision on the segments which you want to serve and those you can't. Because in reality, we can't be everything to everyone. Customer groups that represent separate segments can be if their needs require or justify a distinct user, they're reached through different channels, they require different types of relationships, you offer different value propositions, or they're willing to pay for different services. You may hear marketers talk about personas and persona development. So this is the section where you want that persona to be identified as its own segment. So for example, if your persona's name is Jane and she's a 35-year-old mother based in Sydney who's looking for family-friendly accommodation, then if you were an accommodation provider, you would have one customer segment as families, for example. If you're a landscaper or small business gardener, one of your customer segments could be perhaps new home builds or seniors living at home. Next up is the value proposition. The value proposition is the product and services that create value for a specific customer segment. This is the reason why your customers choose your business over someone else and is one of the most critical things to get right. Once you've understood your audience and their needs, it's important to make sure that your promise or your value proposition is meaningful, is clear, and helps to solve the needs of your customers. So by developing personas, what falls out of that is customer needs and what they're looking for. So your value proposition. So what is the product or service you're offering and how does it meet the needs of your customers? How does it create value for your customers? And this is all part of your brand and what your customers want to hear. A value proposition creates value for a customer segment through a distinct mix of elements catering to that segment's needs. Values may be quantitative, for example, price, speed of service, or they could be qualitative, so more on the customer experience or face-to-face interactions, or perhaps design elements. Moving on to your channels now, these are the ways in which you communicate and reach customer segments to deliver that value proposition. These are the main customer touch points in the customer journey. Channels serve several functions in delivering a value proposition to customers, raising awareness amongst customers about your business's products and services, allowing customers to purchase something, helping customers to elevate your value proposition, and perhaps providing post-purchase customer support. Channels can be both direct and indirect, and they can also be owned by you, the business, or partner-owned channels. Channels have 5 distinct phases and can cover some or all of them. And these phases are awareness, evaluation, purchase, delivery, and then after sales. And that's one that people often forget. Once a customer's purchased from you, what happens next? And how do you communicate with them? From these channels, we then move into the customer relationships created with your customer segments. The 4 boxes of customer segments, value proposition, channels, and customer relationships all work collaboratively and overlap. Imagine interconnected arrows into each of those boxes. Customer relationships can be driven by the following motivations of customer acquisition, so how you acquire customers, customer retention, and then boosting sales or your upselling, for example. Another way to look at this is your get, keep, and grow strategies. How are you getting customers? Once you've got them, once they've purchased once, how do you keep them? And how do you then grow them and give them incentives to purchase more? As a business, you need to determine the types of relationships you want to establish with each customer segment. Each relationship formed is based on your business model and will deeply influence their personal customer experience with your business and your brand. Some examples of customer relationships include personal assistance, self-service, for example, or perhaps a loyalty program. And nothing beats good old-fashioned, intuitive and consistent customer service. So, for example, if somebody's purchased something on your website and they've given some feedback, then take that feedback on board and listen to them. Now we move on to the revenue streams. Essentially, that's the strategies used to extract value from your customers. So how you convert your customers into money for your business. Based on your identified customer segments, you'll be able to identify what they're truly willing to pay based on your value proposition. A business model can involve 2 different revenue streams. Firstly, one-time customer payments or transactional revenues. And secondly, reoccurring revenues resulting from ongoing payments to deliver a value proposition or provide post-purchase customer support. Each revenue stream may have different pricing mechanisms, such as fixed list prices, volume dependent, market dependent, bargaining, auctioning, or yield management. Some examples of ways to generate revenue streams include licensing and advertising, subscription fees, usage fees, asset sale, and leasing. Next up are the key things that make your business model work, your resources, your activities, and your partners. Starting with key resources, they're the most important assets that you need to operate your business. Every business model needs resources, and they can be physical, financial, intellectual, or human. Physical resources are the ones like your buildings, your vehicles, your machines, distribution networks, manufacturing networks, point of sale systems, and other systems. Financial resources are those that include cash flow and lines of credit. Intellectual resources are the key things that make your business yours. These include proprietary knowledge, your IP, brands, partnerships, customer databases, patents, and copyrights. These are incredibly important components of having a strong business model. Finally, human resources, which are required for every business, but are prominent in certain business models, for example, knowledge-intensive or creative industries. Different key resources are needed depending on the type of business model and can be owned by the company or leased or acquired from key partners. Key activities are those things that you need to make your business operate. It's often the one part of planning where the detail is overlooked, but a crucial element to successful business planning and operations. Like key resources, these activities required to create and offer your value proposition, reach markets across channels, maintain customer relationships, and earn revenue. Key activities can be either production or problem solving. Essentially, these are the things that you and your staff do in your business. Production activities are those which relate to designing and making and delivering a product or service in quantities and quality. Problem-solving activities are those which relate to coming up with new solutions to customer problems. And the not so exciting part of the business, and business owners love to avoid, are the administrative tasks. These need to be captured here too. HR, invoicing, bookkeeping, marketing, experience development, maintenance, and cleaning tasks are all part of this bucket. Key partners refers to the network of suppliers and partnerships you need to make your business work. Some examples include strategic alliances between non-competitors, cooperation, which is the strategic partnership between competitors, joint ventures to develop your business, and buyer-supplier relationships to assure a reliable supply chain. Partners are important to optimize your business model, reduce risk, and acquire additional resources for the business. The final box is the cost structures. That is the costs incurred to operate this business model. Creating and delivering value, maintaining customer relationships, and generating revenue all incurs costs to the business. These can be calculated relatively easily once key resources, activities, and partnerships are all confirmed. Generally, there are two cost structures, cost-driven and value-driven. Cost-driven business models focus on minimizing costs wherever possible. This is like a budget airline, for example. Value-driven are those businesses that are less concerned with the cost implications of a business model design and instead focus on creating value for their customers. For example, a luxury resort. You want to look at your cost structures as either fixed or variable. Fixed costs are those that remain the same despite the volume of goods or services produced. These include salaries and rent. Variable costs are those that vary proportionately with the volume of goods and services produced. There are also cost advantages that a business enjoys as an output expands. These are economies of scale and economies of scope, which are cost advantages due to the larger scope of operations. And you will be interested to know that the next two webinars are all focused around this financial piece and knowing your numbers, which will be a two-part webinar series. So they are the 9 boxes of the business model canvas complete. Here's an example of a completed business model canvas for Airbnb. You can see here that they've identified their particular customer segments as guests and hosts of their platform. And then for the value proposition, there's a different value proposition for both the hosts and the guests. and all of the other things fall out of that. Also, you'll see in their cost structures, this is the cost that it is for Airbnb to run their platform. And then revenue as well, so how they then get their money and their percentages listed. So that concludes our breakdown of the business model canvas. A quick recap, avoid those business planning mistakes, don't overcook it, and getting your thoughts out of your head and into a practical plan. We'll send a follow-up email to you with all the related materials so that you can take these learnings and apply them to your business, and including the business model canvas template tool for you to use, as well as the support material to guide you. Feel free to forward this email to other business owners that you think will benefit from this information as well. So we're moving to questions at the moment. So a couple of questions that have come through. How do I start with my costs to make sure my revenue stream is right? Well, it's always important to start with the expenses when business planning, so your fixed and variable costs, and then work out pricing structures to make sure that you've built your costs into your price. And this will be elaborated on further in the next webinar series of Knowing Your Numbers, in terms of how you list all of the costs and then how you bring them through into price. Another question we have is, how do I decide what channels to be on? Well, it's really not about you deciding, it's about understanding where your customer segments are. So where are your customers interacting? Are they more on Facebook compared to Instagram? Or is it the reverse? Are they more on Instagram? Do they do their research through Pinterest, for example? And is that a channel you should look to be on? It's those things that you need to consider, where your customers finding their information from. Another question is, how do I choose my partners? That's a great question. I'd say group businesses and people who help add value and growth to your business. So what value are you adding to them? And then what value are they adding to you? It should be complementary. So make sure that you are very clear on your ask when you're seeking partners. What is it that you want and what are you willing to give in return? One final question. What's more important, getting or keeping customers? I would say keeping your customers and retaining your customers. They're advocates for life. Once they've purchased once, it's much easier to get them to purchase again because they understand your brand and your products or services. There's too much focus on acquisition in marketing. So an example that we like to use is gyms. So gyms are always trying to get new customers and sign up new memberships, but they never actually focus on the customers that they have, because their rates of people leaving is so high, they just focus on getting new customers all the time. I hope that gives you some insights and food for thought. That's all we have time for today. So thank you so much for your time in joining me. I appreciate how important your time is. Please feel free to get in touch. If you have any questions, my contact details can be found here on screen. Our next webinar in the series will be hosted on Wednesday, the 4th of November. And as I said, it's the Knowing Your Numbers business financials piece. It'll be 2 parts, and yeah, it will take you through all the things you need to consider when actually building out your costs. We'll send the details to register for this webinar in the follow-up email that will be hitting your inboxes tomorrow, as well as a sneak peek for all other webinars in the series. So thank you again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.